You're now watching a clip from the Inspired by show. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to head over there, leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it, and follow the show. When it comes to all the different things you do, like I'm in my head, I'm going, which direction do I want to take this in? Because I feel like I could pick you brains on so many things. But one of the things that I really love about the fact you're sat here is that you're one of the few people we get here that has seen so many episodes of podcasts. You've interviewed people yourself.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you about what you feel makes a good podcast.
Yeah, interesting. I would say guests is very important. Obviously, it depends on the dynamic of the podcast, but guests are important. I would say a very clear goal, objective, niche. So what are you trying to achieve from that podcast? And I feel like it's such a boring answer, but consistency is the most important thing. So my podcast, when I had it, Past, Present, Future, we doubled down and we did one interview, I think a week for like 60 something weeks on the trot, and we saw huge growth. And I feel like it's the same with life in general. It's that sense of like delayed gratification. It's like if you are prepared to go hard for 3 years, an episode every single week for 3 years, you're probably going to be in a pretty good place. So yeah, I'd say consistency, defined goal or niche. The host is obviously very important. So I think you're in a great place there. I think you're amazing, as I've already said. What else? Obviously, production is important. So the quality of the clips and stuff like that is of huge importance now, especially with things like TikTok. I would say those are the main things, I would say, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And how do you know, obviously with Playtime, you're not just the editor and the videographer, to be honest, you're one of the business owners.
Yeah.
And you also select who you work with.
Yeah.
How do you know, like someone comes to you and goes, like, people come to me all the time, who produces your podcast? Yeah, I recommend it to you. But I'm also a bit like, are they going to get picked by these guys? Because you can't have everyone.
Yeah.
How do you, in your gut, know if someone's going to be a good podcast host or even have a good podcast?
Yeah, again, good question. So I would say it boils down to a little bit leading into the last answer is like, what are you trying to achieve from your podcast? And if it's like, I want to talk about reality TV and I want to talk about should a man pay on the first date? And like, I'm sorry, but there's hundreds of podcasts already doing that. And unless you are an exceptional personality, it's probably not going to do very well. You might have a few TikTok clips go viral and this, that, and the other because you're saying something outrageous. But other than that, there's no longevity there. So I would say it's about defining their goals of the podcast, their view of it, but also that longevity piece. Like, how long are you prepared to produce episodes for before you see a return? And if the answer is, I hope after the first season of 8 episodes, we should get some sponsorship, then those are probably not the people we want to work with, because ultimately, like our initial investment in time and stuff like that, we don't really see a huge return until it gets into the later episodes. So the business model is very much built on longevity of relationships with our clients. So that is why it's obviously of huge importance that we onboard the right clients like you, clients such as Dr. Digital Health, who we work with and stuff like that, and Amira. So yeah, probably those two things. Are you prepared to do the work, and what is your podcast about? Is it something unique, and is it well delivered?
Interesting, because that's exactly the two things that we do with publishing books.
And
with choosing authors. People say to me, well, how do you know if you're going to pick a book to publish? And it's exactly the same thing. I think there's a lot of delusion. We talk about delusion already, but there's a lot of unhealthy delusion in the industries when it comes to building a brand, right? Because authors and podcasters are actually very similar in terms of their driver, significance, status, which, by the way, I'm a podcaster, so I'm happy to say, and I'm an author, so I'm happy to say that, a lot of people do have a want and a need to have that external validation. And
I feel like, sorry, on that point, I feel like as long as you're aware of that, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But I feel like the people that are that way but don't admit it, that's when it becomes bad.
So much.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, as long as you're aware of it and you're honest about it, so like, I'm not afraid to say, yeah, of course I really want us to get more followers 100%. And more listeners and so on, because I can get better guests. And I do love it when people go, oh, you're a great interviewer, or you're a great speaker. Like, I love that. The same when people say, oh, please sign my book, but I think the risk is where people lie about it. And then this is why my pet peeve is people saying, be authentic. What does that even mean anymore? Like, the word has been used so many times now, but I think, like you say, there's so many podcasts out there. There's also so many books out there. So now's the time to be a little bit unique with it. What's your views on being disruptive? Because I think there's a lot of stuff online now going, you must have the most disruptive podcasts to be able to get results.
So I guess I'll look at it a bit more broader in terms of just being disruptive in general. It's funny because I was thinking about this last night. So I tweeted something last night and it was quite outlandish, I guess, in terms of what I was saying. But for me, being disruptive, the other side of that could be you generate enemies or you generate haters or whatever and stuff like that. And for me personally, I actually see that as a very positive thing. So I almost attempt to and convince myself that I have an army of people that fucking hate me and want me to fail. Because if I do that and I disrupt them and they hate me, then I work 10 times harder, because whether they exist or not, if I have a pool of haters in the back of my mind, I'm working harder, which means I'm more likely to succeed. So I feel like dependent on what sort of person you are, being disruptive can be important, because yeah, it can give you that additional motivation. But then on the other side, if those haters do turn out to be real and you're quite sensitive, then obviously that can be negative and that could kind of throw you off your goals. But at the same time, I wouldn't encourage people to be disruptive for no reason. I feel like everything that I do that is with a goal of maybe stirring something is something that I believe, but maybe with an added bit of pepper. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's something that I believe and that I would say to people and that I would stand on, but maybe that additional bit of fragrance to give it that response that you're looking for. So be disruptive, not for no reason, and be calculated about what you're doing. And if someone questions you on it, you have to stand on it.